Welcome to Domain Enumeration with DSQuery. DSQuery has got to be one of my all-time favorite tools to use during a red team assessment. It is just awesome for dumping users, groups, domain information. It's also really good at enumerating very specific details. So let's just say we have an example here. Let's say you're on an assessment, you're trying to find some type of Linux administrator. If you're using the net tools, it's really hard to search and filter on specific things. But since you're using DSQuery, which is very similar to using LDAP searches, you can pass in very specific filters looking for everything that has Linux in the name or everything that has administrator in the name. And you can even further restrict the filter by looking at very specific sections of the user object, like the description field, right? If an administrator sets a user and sets the little description, Linux administrator, you're going to be able to filter on that. And that's just one example of using DSQuery. Let's jump in. I want to run through some of the examples in the RTFM. Now, first thing I want to cover here is kind of this call out at the top of the page. All DSQuery commands must be run from a machine that has DSQuery exe on disk. This is most commonly Windows Server installations. Typically, Windows workstations do not have DSQuery.exe on it, although it is worth pointing out they do have some supporting DLLs. So sometimes you can just drop that DSQuery exe and run it from there. Or if you're using a different remote access tool like Sliver or Cobalt Strike that has some type of LDAP search, a lot of these queries can be plug and play right into those tools. The other thing I want to hit on here is privilege level. DSQuery does not require administrative privileges, which is awesome. If you're on a red team assessment, you get dropped in on a workstation, you can actually upload dsquery.exe or use a different LDAP search tool and use all the filters from this page to further check out the domain, dump users, groups, and hopefully find a way to privilege escalate in the domain. And to tackle this section, I'm actually going to do a mix of talking through some of the commands and then running some of them in the target environment. I want to make sure you get all the context of why they were put in the document and what you can expect by running the commands. So jumping right in here, I do need to give myself a shell so we can run them all using dsquery.exe. So let's jump down, perfect. And now the first one here, you should probably pay close attention because this is the first DSQuery in the document and it's one of my favorites, right? So let's paste this in here. So this is going to do a DSQuery. This annotates the start position of the query. Just because we wanted to keep them all simple in the book, I always use wildcard for the most part. Like I said, you can give it a starting OU in Active Directory, but if you're kind of unsure of where to proceed, just give it the asterisk, you're okay. Now, I do want to say if the environment is massive that you're working in, this is going to search a lot of objects, so keep that in mind. We're going to give it the TAC filter option. That says restrict my search all the way down to exactly what I'm pointing out here. And you can see right here, this is the exact filter we want to restrict the query down to. We want to make sure we only print out users. So we say object class equals user. Please pay close attention to the fact that it says user. It does not say users. That's a common misconception I've seen a lot throughout some of my teaching. I don't even think DSQuery will throw an error. It's just going to return nothing, leaving you confused. Now, I also want to call out the fact that there's an ampersand here. That means and the filter with two separate things. So any matching results have to be a user and they must have this admin account flag set. So there's a very specific flag in Active Directory admin count that gets incremented to 1 if the user has some type of administrative privilege. So what I like to say is this query is a good example of just casting a wide net, pulling back any potentially administrative user. From there, you can kind of filter through the results and see if you want to get any more details. And then lastly, we have a TAC adder here. This is just telling it, hey, I only want these two attributes from every matching object. Rather than printing out 40 different attributes for every single object, we just want their SAM account name, which that is their Windows username, and we'll go ahead and print out their name as well. So let's go ahead and fire this one off, see what it comes back with. So nothing too surprising here. We see we have an administrator account. We have that Vagrant account that we saw before, KRB, TGT, and then we have 4 administrators here. We have base admin, Jay Nolan, Hannah Brown, and of course, Sarah Austin. We were able to find her plain text password in previous videos and gain access to this domain controller. But yeah, definitely a great way to dump just potential administrators, their usernames, and then their full names printed out. Another handy option here is to output DSQuery to a specific path on disk, to a text file. Now, I really want to kind of throw us back to our file server enumeration video. We ended up running a lot of dir walks and trees of the big file server and running that out to a file on disk. This is very similar. A lot of times we'll run DS queries enumerating all these Active Directory objects, and we'll output them all to a text file on the disk. Again, so you can retrieve that, compress it, download it back to your attack station, extract it there, and then you can look and filter through all that data on your own local machine, and you're not actually running those queries every single time on the target customer machine. So definitely a good option. I would recommend you do that if you can. We can run makecab to compress our file, and then once it's back on our attack box, we can run the expand command to go ahead and extract that back to its plain text. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on organizational unit. I want you to kind of think of that as a folder that administrators use to further organize data. They may have an organizational unit for Florida, for all their Florida office information. They may have an organizational unit for printers and all their printer machines go in there, something like that. So it's just a folder that they can further classify. But as a red team operator, you may be interested in dumping these organizational units because maybe there's one for Linux machines and you're purposely looking for a Linux machine. So definitely a good query to do. Let's go ahead and run it over here and we'll see what comes back. These are all our organizational units. As you can see, the formatting could leave a little bit to be desired here. Let me repaste it in. It's a little bit easier to read. So we have the name of that folder, that organizational unit. We have the full chain that it's nested in. And again, kind of long story short here, I want you to think of these all kind of like folders. Obviously, you have your domain names, like we have our Chicago domain and then our parent Cyber Inc. domain. But then inside of that, we also have these IT and HR folders. Again, users, computers, they can nest all sorts of data in those folders. Also, remember what I mentioned in the beginning, this description attribute can be applied to any number of objects, and it typically has some helpful information. So always print out description if you can. You may see some cool stuff in there. Another great query here, and again, kind of giving you some sample syntax that you can run with. We have a DSQuery doing operating system equals *10*. And I do want to really focus in on these asterisks right here. Basically, those are wildcards. So that's saying, give me back all computer objects that have 10 anywhere in the operating system. It could literally say Linux 10, and that's going to be returned with this query. Now, the goal here is to return Windows 10, so we'll see if that works. Lastly, we have our attributes here. We have our name attribute, operating system, DNS hostname. These are just some common attributes that I like to use with my DS queries when I'm looking for computers and other things like that. And then lastly, limit 0. Limit 0 is going to tell DSQuery, I want every possible result. By default, DSQuery will limit queries to 100 items being returned. If you want more than that, limit 0 will give you everything, which again, I always say this, but be careful. If there's millions of records in a domain, you are very quickly going to just blow up your callback, lots of data going over the wire. You're going to cause the domain controller to do a lot of searching, so just be careful. Let's go ahead, run this one. It's going to go perform the query against the domain controller. So we got back exactly what we expected here. We got our name, our host name of the machine. We got our operating system. Again, remember *10*, came back with all of our matches, which was Windows 10 Pro here. And then I just really like DNS host name. It'll give us the fully qualified domain name of the target machine. So we could go ahead, NS lookup, we could dir the machine, we could interact with it from here. Yet another great wildcard option here. So DSQuery filter. And then we have name equals *DC*. So again, wildcards, right? If the host name has DC in it anywhere, it's going to go ahead and return that object. Now, if you've done any type of red teaming before, you know I'm trying to find domain controllers with this query. I would say a lot of the time, domain controllers have DC in the host name somewhere. Typically, organizations are going to have some type of naming hierarchy on all of their systems. That way, if administrators see the host name, they kind of have an idea whether it's a workstation, domain controller, maybe it's a web server, some type of database server, stuff like that. As far as attributes, nothing we haven't seen before. We have the name here, the operating system, the DNS hostname, and then again, you see the limit 0, bring back all the results. Now, a few things I want to show here. Obviously, these are not all computers that are coming back, right? I'm searching any object. It could be a computer, it could be those OUs, a user, any of those things. I'm just searching for a name equals *DC*. So you may see a lot of odd objects come back. That's okay. If you wanted to go back and modify your query, you could always do object class equals computer and name equals star DC star. So feel free to do that if you want. But otherwise, we see our Chicago DC here. We see the operating system, and then of course the fully qualified domain name here. Here's another awesome query that should hopefully get you thinking. We have another one here, name equals star Smith star. A lot of times we're looking for a very specific user. You can search their name right here and get back their actual logon name. From there, maybe you could spawn a credential as that user. There's a lot of other options. So let's fire this one off. I'm not sure if we have any Smiths. Oh, we do have a bunch of Smiths actually. Cody Smith, Matthew Smith, and just remember, any name that has Smith in it somewhere is going to return here. So this is a great DSQuery, but it does take a little more work to get working. Let me go ahead, let me copy this out to a notepad here. Let's start a new tab. Go ahead and paste it in. So we have this last logon time. So what this query is going to do is return any number of users that have logged in recently. And this is a great query to run, especially in an environment where they have a lot of old administrative accounts that just aren't used anymore. You can very specifically hone in on only users that have recently been active in the network, which is obviously going to lower your chances of being found. Typically, I'll run net user to grab when a user last logged in. I'll then DSQuery that same user to get that epoch time, kind of in a similar ballpark that I'm looking for. Then I'll go ahead and adjust that epoch time back, 30 days, whatever, just to make sure it makes sense. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. Let's do a net user, Phyllis Snyder, whack domain. From here, we can see a last logon time of July 30th, 2023. Now I want to go ahead and run this DSQuery. So we have a DSQuery star, tag filter. We have the same account name equals Phyllis Snyder. So this is a very direct query. We just want to query Phyllis Snyder exactly, and then we want to print out her SAM account name and last logon here. From here, we have the epoch time, and we know this is July 30th because we just did that net user. So we take this epoch time, we go over to our little notes here, we plug it in here. Let's go back to the RTFM because we actually give you a little hint. We say 1 with 12 zeros is a day in epoch. Just add or subtract to adjust the DSQuery filter. Now, this is a little tricky, obviously. I'm gonna kind of zero this out. So we know we need to modify this number here to make the query go in the future or to go backwards. So if I want to go back one day, I'll just go ahead and switch this to a 1. And then we grab the whole string here. Let's get it pasted in. And sure enough, we have all the users that have logged in since that last epoch time. So we have Matthew Yates, Jennifer Burton. This is a really good way to grab active users. Now, if you're paying attention, there are some computers included in the results, but that's a little confusing, right? Because we have object class equals user. Well, Active Directory actually tags all computer objects as being users as well. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on that, but keep that in mind. Whenever you're doing object class equals user, you may get some computers back as well. Next up, we have an awesome trust command here. This is going to dump out our current domain and any trusts it has with other domains. And in our case here, you can see Cyber Inc. That means that our Chicago domain trusts Cyber Inc. because it's a trust direction of 3. Now, I don't want to go into a ton of detail here, but trust directions are pretty easy to remember. I always like to think our number one best case scenario is the target domain trusts us. So that's a trust direction of 1. Our best case scenario, the target domain trusts us. We can log into the target domain, right? A trust direction of 2 is the opposite. That means that I trust the target domain so they can log into my domain. And then finally, trust direction of 3 is just both ways. Really easy to remember. This is another awesome DSQuery that I'll typically run to follow up the previous one. This query is actually going to try and enumerate objects in a remote domain. So this is actually going to go out to a target domain where there's some type of trust set up and dump some of the objects over there. So we're going to tweak this one. We're going to actually run this against the Cyber Inc. domain controller because we saw that trust there. And not surprising, we get back the domain controller host name along with its fully qualified domain name. So if we wanted, we could start to interrogate this other domain controller that exists in a totally different Active Directory domain, which we'll be doing in some later videos, but pretty awesome query here. Definitely use it if you're trying to look and grow outside of your current domain. Moving on along back to back here, these are just some helpful queries that dump a bunch of different types of objects with really helpful attributes. These are a lot of the different attributes that I personally prefer. Here we have the name, we have the fully qualified domain name, operating system, and then that description field I keep talking about. There's nothing in these results that have a description, but always a good one to dump there. The next one is going to dump users and their attributes. So let's go ahead and run that. As you can see, some computers, we shouldn't be surprised there. But we also have the users here and then also the groups they're in. So that's really, really helpful as well. If you just want to dump all users and the groups, maybe put it out to a file, download it off the host, and then you can do all the analysis you want. The next one is going to be dumping groups and the users that are included in them. Again, maybe you're looking for a very, very specific type of user. Maybe you're looking for all the interns in some company. You could potentially see if they're in a group called interns, and this would give you the group name and all the members of that group. Just another helpful query here. This is going to do a query looking for any type of name that has admin in it at all. This could be users, groups, OUs, anything that has a name that has admin in it. Let's go ahead and run it. Kind of not surprising here, right? We have a lot of our different groups that are included in the Chicago domain. Nothing too crazy. And then lastly, this one's really cool. This will actually convert that really long, weird epoch time into a human readable time. So I have it pasted here. Let's go ahead, we'll scroll up, find one of those epoch times from one of the users that logged in, and I'll show you the output here. So I got that copied to my clipboard. We're gonna paste it in. And here's the human readable format version of that epoch time. So this is what, July 30th, 2023. So all in all, DSQuery, hope you found it helpful. It is a great tool and kind of a little bit of bonus information. If you're using other tools like AD search or LDAP search, you can actually use a lot of the filters that you see in the RTFM with those tools as well. They still use those object class, the parentheses, the quotes. Well, that about wraps the video. I hope you found it helpful. In our next video, we're gonna be covering Mimikatz. We're gonna be dumping passwords, hashes, and all sorts of fun things. So I hope to see you there.